This is Sarah Leslie with Go All In, helping entrepreneurs live the life they want to live right now, making the money they want to make the way they want to make it, while also living a rich and full life outside of their business. True personal freedom. Let's go. Hey, hey, hey. I'm so glad to be here, and I am so glad that you are too. It's been such a quick month. I feel like May is a really long month, and yet here we are in the last week of the month, and I feel like it has just flown by. And the last week of the month, I normally am really focused in on certain projects that I've been working on in my business. And so it's like a really sweet week for me. I, of course, love all the parts of my business at this point and love working with clients and love the clients I'm currently working with. And also, this is the week where I don't meet with them, and I, generally speaking, don't attend outside events. And I'm really just very focused in on my own business, my own life, and what are the projects that really need my attention, really undivided and focused attention, that I would say doesn't happen quite in this way, where I have like the whole week to work on things with great focus. And so anyway, all of that just to share, I love this week. It's a very sweet time for me. And I was contemplating what did I want to share for the podcast this week. And I thought I was going to have time this week, and I ended up not quite having time to get out the most recent idea I've been toying with and working through. And then I had this idea, which has been mentioned to me before in podcasting land, of republishing a past episode. And I was like, oh, that actually sounds like a lot of fun. What would that look like for me? So this is the first time that I am republishing an episode. I wanted to share the reasons that I was doing that because, listen, life happens and things don't unfold exactly as we had planned them down to the minute. So we certainly get to have the desires of our heart, which you've heard me say 1,000 times. And things are to some degree unpredictable, probably to a large degree, I would say, are unpredictable. And so just the way that things unfolded over these last 2 weeks, I didn't end up creating a brand new podcast episode. And a past version of me would have pushed really hard and made it happen. And I totally could have done that this time, except that that's not who I'm being anymore. That's just not how I'm choosing to show up in my life anymore. And so instead, I considered some of the options. I could push it off a week. I could create something that was really short and simple. And then I had this idea, which again, I had been offered before in some of the training and coaching that I've gotten around starting a podcast, of republishing a past episode and giving some insight or some awarenesses or updated information in the intro or the pre, and then offering up the new podcast. So I am going to republish and introduce to you the first episode that I published called Go All In on your life and business. And what does that really mean to go all in? And I give a broad overview of what I believe it means to go all in. And I listened to this episode over this weekend and I was like, yes, this is so good. I absolutely would want to bring that forward and have people listen to it again and be reintroduced to it. The idea, if you haven't listened to the first episode already. So if you've listened to it, it's been a year. Trust me, you're going to learn something new. And if you haven't listened to it, here's the first episode I've ever done. And the two things that really stood out to me as I listened to this episode are, I, even a year ago, was still sorting out what do I think it means to be an entrepreneur, and also the concept of who has total freedom and control over their time. And so my thoughts have updated since a year ago. And I say in the podcast that, I reference entrepreneurs as a select group of the public. And what I actually think now is that we were all born to be entrepreneurs. And I've thought that for a few years. It's just the way that I ended up saying in this podcast, it feels a little unclear. And so I just want to restate, I actually believe at the core, we are all entrepreneurial and we are born to be in charge of our time and in charge of our futures and, dare I say, our destinies. And so while you may hear me reference in this podcast, that only some of us have control over our time,
I actually also think we all have control over our time, all our time. And it is true, when you're working for someone else, it can feel like you're not as in control of your time as you would like to be. And again, I do genuinely believe this comes back to a mindset, a perspective, and the way that you are being in the world that makes all the difference, whether you are actually working for yourself or you are working for someone else. So enjoy the episode, really diving in and getting clear for yourself. What does it mean for you to be going all in on your life and your business? And again, I work with entrepreneurs because of where they're already at in their life. They absolutely need the kind of support that I provide, because being an entrepreneur working for yourself, it takes such a massive amount of self-trust and faith that my heart just feels called to be working with those folks. And also, I work with whoever God brings into my world. And so just let that be a reminder that if you're not yet an entrepreneur, or you don't see yourself as an entrepreneur, or you're not working for yourself, and yet you feel called into my world, you are here for a reason, and you are most definitely welcomed to be here. All right, you guys, I will see you and talk with you in a couple of weeks. Cheers. Enjoy that episode. Welcome to Go All In, the first podcast. I am so excited to be here with you, and I'm so glad that you're here too. Today's podcast is going to be all about, how do you go all in, right? Like, what does that phrase actually mean? And then how do you actually do it? Going all in on your life, on your path, on your business, your purpose. And when I say go all in, it's on all of those things. So whether or not you're already an entrepreneur, or you're someone who is sort of what I call in the waiting to be an entrepreneur, or you happen to work for someone where you actually get to feel and operate like an entrepreneur, it's really in the essence of, one, carving your own path, and two, having the fullness of creativity and full expression of yourself available to you. In most cases, that is hard to do when you're working for someone else, and it is possible. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. That being said, if most of the time you'll hear me referring to people owning their own business or entrepreneurs and so forth and so on, because that just happens to be the majority of people who have the freedom to have the fullness of themselves available at all times. This gets to the heart of what I mean by going all in. It's about you going all in on you. You being who you were designed to be, the way you desire to be. Instead of you fantasizing about this person you wish you were, you're actually operating as this person. You don't spend all this time in your head thinking about and wishing you could be who you wanted to be. You're actually being that person. So it looks like you doing what you feel the impulse of life within you, like urging you to do. It's for you to be able to just say the thing and to lean in to the conversations and to the moments of your life that feel uncomfortable or precarious, because those are the times that are actually the hardest to say the thing, to lean in, to show up in the fullness of who you are, standing strong. And the way it feels for me is like fully being in your presence, fully being in your body, right? Which really just means you're able to like remove all the fears and all the worries, all the judgments, all the shame, all the not good enough, and actually just say what you're thinking from a place of neutrality, or from a place of self-respect, from a place of being self-honoring. So I'm not saying you just go off, right? That's completely missing the point. Okay, so that being said, right, you're here because you want to live fully, and you know that you're not. Such an uncomfortable place to be in life, where you like have this like burning desire to live fully, and yet you also realize you're not doing it. Part of how you know you're not doing it, right, is because, again, you're spending a lot of time here in your head, wishing you had X, wishing you could do Y, wishing your circumstances at home were different, wishing your circumstances with your work, with your income, with your business, with your purpose, with your boss was different. Your relationship with your kids. I mean, and the list goes on. So if you're wishing more than you're actually present in your life right now and projecting into the future, then you know you're just not living fully. Now, the way I used to think about this is that I had one foot in and one foot out. In other words, I had one foot in my life, one foot in my being present, my experience, and then one foot out. And when I think about one foot out, for me personally, it was like the sense of not wanting to be alive anymore. It was like, this is not how I want it to be. And I am not enjoying myself being here on planet Earth, in other words. So I would have one foot in and one foot out, which is like, I'm alive at 50%. It's kind of like really not a good place to be. So if you're feeling that this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whatever time you happen to be listening to this, I happen to be recording it at 10 a.m. I want you to know you're not alone. This is a very, very, very common life experience. As a therapist for 20 years and now a life coach of 5 years, officially, those are my titles, and just doing this kind of work and having deep, intimate conversations with people for over 25 years, the reality is I have heard countless number of people express the same sentiment. It's actually a very common life experience. The thing is it makes us feel so freaking uncomfortable. We don't talk about it as people very often. So you end up thinking there's something wrong with you and or your experience is unique. So if you get nothing from this podcast, then to hear me say, you are not unique in this struggle, in this sensation, in this experience, I think it's probably the best gift I could give you this morning for you to hear that. That being said, I have a lot of other juiciness, so let's keep going. Okay. So when you're ready, right, you get to this point where you're just so ready to go all in, to have life look like, be like the way you imagine it. A lot of people in conversations with me these days will say, I really want my life to look like X. Now, when I get into the conversation with them and I lean into it and I say, well, how important is it to you really? Would you be willing to do whatever it takes to actually create that vision that you've just so beautifully described to me? I would say maybe like 7 out of 10 people that I talk to, maybe even 8 out of 10 are like, oh, no, I wouldn't be willing to do whatever it takes. And that's how you know the difference between whether or not you are ready to go all in. Now, in my own life, this took a hot minute for me to get to the place where I was actually ready to go all in. So like wherever you're at is beautiful and it's just where you're at. That's all it is. It isn't for you to feel bad that you're not at that place. It isn't for you to feel like, you're a failure or you're not good enough or any of that bullshit. It's for you to get real with where you're at. So many people live in a quasi fantasy land that they just have no idea where they're really at. And so what they do is they create a loop where they strongly think they desire a thing, right? They're like, oh, I really want blah, blah, blah. I want to, make twice as much money as I'm making so that I could travel. I really want a partner who loves me so much. I really want to do work that feels so meaningful and exciting, and I can't wait to get out of bed. Probably you can relate to one of those three, if not all of them. That was definitely me. I wanted all of them several years back now. Until you get to the point where you say, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to create X, and you're just not really at that point. It's okay. Build the readiness, right? In therapy, we used to call this a readiness to change, right? In motivational interviewing, it was all about how ready are you to really make the change? Because there's a whole spectrum of readiness. So the more you can get honest with yourself about where you're at, you literally stop the looping of, oh, I want this thing so bad. And then, oh, I don't have it. I'm so disappointed. I'm so sad. Oh, I want this thing so bad. Oh, I'm so disappointed. I don't get this thing. Right. And that just goes on and on and on and on. And the way to stop that is simply to say, where am I on the readiness spectrum? Now that you can be more clear, more honest with yourself, this is where I'm at. I would be like ready to do this much. Sometimes it helps even just to scale it on a 1 to 10 scale of readiness, right? I was about 37, 38, and I had gotten to the point where I was utterly miserable in my job, in my love life, in my personal life, with where I was living, and just all around. Like you could just say, like in my whole life, I felt utterly miserable. And I hope for you to not have to go to that point for sure. A lot of people actually can hang out in like a 6, 7 readiness to change, which honestly, I think about in my church upbringing as being lukewarm. And it's a miserable place to be. There's like 60, 70% of you that like really wants to change. And then 30 to 40% of you that's completely holding yourself back and staying right in the stagnant place that you're in, which just sounds awful to live there forever. That being said, my hope for you is that you can get to the 10, right? At 100%, like, I'm so ready, I'm so willing, and I want to go all in. Part of what I would offer to you here to think about as far as going all in, you are designed to operate in your desires. Literally, you're designed to experience impulses of life, excitement, desires, purpose, creativity, and it's unique to you, just like it's unique to me, and you're meant to live inside of that place, inside of those things. Those things are meant to be your life experience. So if you're not doing them, that is why you're not living full out, why you don't feel excited to wake up in the morning and greet the day and go do things. If you're dragging through the day at all or dragging through any part of your life, it is because you're not living what your desires tell you you're meant for. So stay tuned for a future podcast where I'm going to like break down in great detail desire. So why does this happen? This is very simple. We are raised with a certain set of beliefs, certain set of values, certain set of thoughts and opinions and way of being in the world from 0 to 7. And between 0 and 7, it's when the mind is like it is a sponge. It's not like a sponge, it is a sponge. And it absorbs everything in your world. Think back to 0 to 7 or think of a 0 to 7-year-old that's in your world right now. They are sponges. They hear you talk, they repeat exactly what you say. You know, there's always a funny story about how the little kid repeats something out in the world that their parents had said at home. And it was like, not appropriate, I say in air quotes. And it's funny because we know it's the parents, not the kid, that came up with whatever the thing is that he said, right? Whether he's talking about something, you know, that's just far beyond what he would ever think up himself or herself, right? This is because that's how our minds are designed to operate. Between 0 to 7, we operate as a sponge that picks up on everything going on in our environment so that we can learn rapidly how to be a human. So amazing. From 0 to 7, you learn basically everything you need to know at a foundational level. You're taking in all of your environment, which means you're taking in things like money doesn't grow on trees. That costs too much. You have to work really hard. I have to get up and go to work today. There isn't enough money for that. Eat all the things on your plate. You have to wear hand-me-down clothes. Why can't you be more like your brother? Why can't you be more like your sister? You hear all of those things between 0 and 7, and you soak it in as if it's the truth. Okay? And so as you're hearing all of these things from 0 to 7, I mean, think about how many things you learned from 0 to 7. It's like a whole lifetime's worth. You soak it all in, and this forms your world view, your foundation for how to live, how to be a human and survive in the world. And the parents and any adult in your world from 0 to 7, their primary innate function is to teach the 0 to 7 how to survive. It's just an innate function. It's why you hear parents giving so much instruction, whether it's in a useful way or a less than useful way. They're giving a lot of instruction for how to be. Okay. That being said, as we get older, right, we become teenagers and we become adults and young adults, older adults, right, at every stage as we progress, we learn new things from the world. We learn new things from the adults in our world. We learn new things from school, from TV, from social media. And we bring those things in as well. Without even knowing it, you're constantly assessing, does this fit inside my worldview that I got from 0 to 7? Constantly. You're not conscious of it. You're just naturally, unconsciously doing it all the time. So it's not something you're going to notice. It's happening unconsciously all day long. Now, some things will come in and you'll think unconsciously again, right? Ooh, this goes against my initial programming, but I really want it. That is when we start to experience internal conflict. Okay? Again, I'm going to go into a lot of this stuff in greater detail in individual podcasts. So I'm giving an overview today. You start to develop this internal conflict. Why? Because you have a desire that falls outside of the parental foundation that you received. Okay? And you also start to have these times where maybe your parents said, let me think of something. Says something to you like, we don't talk about our feelings, right? This is a very common one. We don't talk about our feelings outside of the home. You can share some of that stuff here, but not outside the home. Or maybe you're not allowed to cry. Something like that. Let's use that one because that's so easy. You're not allowed to cry. And then you start to feel really sad. Somebody hurt your feelings at school and you start to cry. You come into conflict with your programming, right? And so again, you create internal conflict within yourself, which is how we start to create and generate a sense of mistrust with ourselves, with the world around us, and without being conscious, of course, at 0 to 7, with God, the universe, the divine, the substance that created all of us, whatever word works well for you. I'm just going to simplify with God. And this is where, again, we start to feel this uncertainty, this dis-ease within us. Again, a lot of this is very unconscious. And you might feel it, but also have no idea why it's happening because you're little. And as you grow up, still the same, because you have no context for what is actually going on inside of you. You don't really know what's happening. Okay. So all of that is just to give you the real nitty-gritty detail on why you now as an adult are not able to play full out. You're not able to live inside of your desires because they come into conflict with your core foundation. So you'll feel I know for me, even as a therapist, super educated, very well-trained therapist, I didn't understand what was going on with me. I was having desires that fell outside of what I learned as the foundational upbringing, right? My core foundation. I was having these desires of, I wanted to be a world traveler. I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to work from home. I wanted to be able to work remotely. None of the people in my childhood experience that I was aware of did any of those things. And if they did them, it was done with a certain sense of like, this is hard, or you can't do this until a certain time period in your life. Like there were a lot of rules and limitations around it. So I developed in my 30s a lot of internal conflict. Now, little did I know the internal conflict was brewing since 15, probably, and probably even earlier than that if I really sat down and thought about it. Where I really felt it, though, was when I was about 15. High school, college was a little bit less, and then definitely into my later 20s and 30s, like massively in my 30s. So this is important, right? This is like the key to understanding what the heck is going on with you. Because when you don't know what's going on with you, it feels terrifying. And that is where the miserable really generates from if you happen to be feeling that way. Like, and again, whether you're feeling miserable or you're just like at the 10 and you're like, I can't wait to like really go all in. How do I do it? You're in the right place. Like I got you covered both ways. Okay. And it's still really important because when you're ready to go all in, and even as if you're already going all in and you want to go like leaps and bounds ahead and you just want more and more in your life, you're going to continue to encounter this core teaching that I'm sharing with you this morning of the 0 to 7 self. It will greet you, usually in very uncomfortable ways, at every interval as you upgrade in your life. When you know that this is how it works, everything feels so much better because you actually understand what the heck is happening with you. Instead of feeling like, I'm so confused, why can't I break past 100K? I'm so confused, why can't I break past 500K? I'm so confused, I'm married to this amazing human, and yet I don't feel as loved and cherished as I want to. It's simply because you have a limit from that 0 to 7 self for what is possible within your own mind right now. Okay. So going all in, I'm going to break it down for you here. These 3 key things that helps you move past and actually like do your desires. So it's a shifting from following your programming to creating the life you want. This is your foundational framework of what you're actually wanting to see happen. Okay. This part is super important to really understand. It's the shift from your natural programming as it has been up to date to a focus on this is what I'm creating. So first, you need to have a personal vision. If you don't have the vision clear in your mind, you will naturally focus on what you do not want. It's just the natural way of our minds and our being. So you need to have a personal vision with all of your desires clear in your mind, as clear as you can get them as of today, right? There's no like grade on this. You can't do it wrong. And you can only see so much based on wherever it is in your emotional awareness and your emotional state, right? So the more miserable you are, the harder it will be to see the vision. Typically, that's not always the case, but just generally speaking, the more clear-minded you are, the more certain, the more you're ready, you're scaling at a 10 for readiness, the easier it will be to see the vision. Okay. So having that personal vision in place, clear in your mind, I recommend having it written down. Again, future podcast very soon coming up will have exactly how to do creating your personal vision. And I want you to know here also, right? Literally 50% of the time when I ask very successful, educated people, what's your personal vision? Their immediate reaction is, I don't know. So you're in good company if you're really not sure. That's why I'm going to do a whole podcast on it. Number 2, commit to yourself first over everyone else. Now, again, this is going to hit up against your programming. Creating a vision will also. committing to yourself first before everyone will also hit up against your programming, because most of us, if you're anything like me, growing up in a family where we went to church regularly, my dad was a pastor, my mom worked for the local not-for-profit agency. We were all about helping other people. They were, and so then my sister and I were as well, right? We just learned from them, and it was a natural fit for both of us. We both love to help other people. This will fly in the face of your programming, most likely, okay? You've probably heard all kinds of programming around don't be selfish, don't be self-centered, don't focus on yourself so much. I heard all of those things. And I'm going to talk about this as well in a separate podcast, just this one bullet point. I want you to have a real understanding of what it actually looks like to be committed to yourself and why that's so important. And I'm just simply going to say here, if you're not committed to yourself and your desires and your life being as you desire it to be, then you're committed to someone else's perception of what your life should be like. Whoa. Mic drop on that. Please listen to that over and over and over and really meditate on it. So when you become committed to yourself, right, you will feel less of an imposter in your life. So if you have any essence of feeling like an imposter right now, it is because you're trying to break out of your core programming. And I'm just going to keep it like so simple and just say you're desiring success in your business, in your income, in your health, in your love life, and you're hitting up against limits and challenges for those to actually be as you desire them, and you feel like an imposter. The reason is because you're coming into conflict with your internal programming. Okay? That's it. It's actually just that simple. It's not any more complicated than that. You don't need like 1,000 different programs to heal you, to fix you, because really there's nothing wrong. You're actually operating exactly as you're intended to operate, in the sense that like your mind is working exactly as it is designed. The challenge, right, is that you have to be more committed to yourself in order to not feel like an imposter. Okay. That brings me to my third bullet point, which again, right, is probably the most important thing. And it is the motivator for my work. It is the motivator for why I'm here. And it is the thing that changed my life the most and the quickest and the most radical. And that is to hire a mentor. I wanted a mentor forever. Like, when I sat and thought about how long did I want a mentor? Like, when did I like start to desire a mentor? And I track it all the way back for sure as early as high school. And I remember sitting in my psychology teacher's high school class. His name was Mr. Droz, and he taught psychology as like an extracurricular class that I was in. And I would go and I would hang out with him on my lunches after school. And I thought he was the coolest teacher. And I loved how he listened to me. And I loved how he told me about life. Oh, I'm getting emotional. It's so like touching to me, these precious, precious moments with this teacher, right? And I had several teachers that were like that because I craved mentorship. Now, if you grew up in the church, you would have heard the word discipleship. Okay. It's literally the same thing. We have a lot of different words. The word changes over time, and the core crux of it is the same. We're desiring to be with people who really get us, who get who we desire to be, who get our true selves, our most authentic self, the self that is clear on the desires of our hearts. And oftentimes that's just not our parents, to no fault of their own. Like, they have their own unique desires and their own unique programming from their parents. So oftentimes the mentors that we most need will not be our parents. We seek out, naturally, we'll seek out and gravitate towards people who have similar desires to us. I loved being a teacher. Like from early on, I loved playing teacher with my sister and our dolls and our Cabbage Patch and all the things. And we had little desks and all the things. And I loved to be a teacher. I loved to teach. I loved to impart wisdom. I loved to teach my sister things out of like this older sister, like desire to protect her and nurture her and educate her. That is innate in most of us, right? That is the dynamic of having parents and kids. All that to say, it was so natural for me to gravitate to my teachers, and then as I got older, to my professors. So when I say hire a mentor, the goal here of hiring a mentor is that you seek out someone who has similar desires to you, someone who's out ahead of you in the areas where you're wanting to go and living some part of a lifestyle that you also desire to have. So you're going to hire over your years different types of mentors at different times. And I'm going to encourage you to hire these people as quickly as you can get yourself to hire them, because there's something that happens when you're hiring, like when there's the exchange of money, and you know that this is how it works, right? When you exchange money, you're making a much stronger commitment on both parts, right? You're making a commitment to show up more powerfully because you're investing in the commitment. Find the mentors wherever you can. Even if you're early on starting out, you find mentors on YouTube, cool. Refer to them, consider them as your mentors. Now, I'm going to just put a little caveat here. If you're accessing a mentor that's not working with you one-on-one, so even if you're in a group program, you always have to take it with a grain of salt to filter through, because they're not giving you your own unique needed help. That's not to say that programs don't work, because they absolutely do. I've been in many programs that are incredibly effective. And what I'm talking about is hiring a mentor who really truly sees you and who can help you start to work through your childhood 0 to 7 internal programming and help you parcel out what's programming and what's desire. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. I used YouTube a lot. I used podcasts a lot. They were never actually able to tell me the core things that I really needed to actually look at to make the radical changes. And even when I then started working inside of groups and or, larger weekend activities where it was still like a big group, I got more one-on-one. I was seen more for one-on-one and who I was specifically. And it was really like short-lived, or I only got like a little bit of that individualized attention. And so it only took me so far. When I started working with a one-to-one mentor who saw me for me, who was also a significant stretch for me to invest in, which just meant I was more committed, right? I was at a 10. I was more committed because it was really stretching me. I accessed the heck out of that resource. And I'm still working with him today. It's been almost 3 years. The first year I worked with this person, I would reach out to him almost every day because I was that committed to the process. I was that committed to myself. I was that committed to the work. I was that committed to me creating what I wanted for my life. So I'm going to leave you on this note, right? The importance of hiring a mentor. It is this core crux, okay? And again, all the ways you can get mentorship are useful, and get yourself to hire a one-to-one as quickly as you can, and get yourself to hire a one-to-one that stretches you and is in alignment for who you desire to be, okay? Because I also played cheap a handful of times, and I ended up hiring somebody that was an older version of me that I was not desiring to replicate. When you're working with someone who can see you from that far out, who can zoom that far out, and then also zoom right in and say, oh, we got to look at this right here. This is when you get those quantum results. You go from incrementally moving forward to catapulting you forward, okay? And if you're anything like me, well, that's what you want. You want that catapulting forward because I wanted to be the most me that I possibly could as quickly as possible so that I could feel at ease and comfortable in my own skin. Because when I feel at ease and comfortable in my own skin, I can literally go do whatever the heck I desire to do. Travel, go talk to people, show up at networking events like a total badass, have conversations with people, be the life. Oftentimes, I am like the most alive person at events when I go to them. Why? Because I put in this work to shaking out the things within me that were not really me, that were just childhood programming, keeping me from actually being this version of me. That's the result of doing this kind of work. And this is the work that I do to help people. I'm so glad that you are here, and I look forward to seeing you in podcast number 2. Ready to hire your own personal one-to-one mentor to help you take your life and your business to the next level? Go to my website where you can sign up for a no charge, no pressure consultation where we can get to know each other better. I get to hear your vision. I'll help you understand exactly what's getting in your way. And if it feels like a good fit and I believe I can help you, we'll talk about what it looks like to work together.